Everybody had a good Christmas, I assume. Yes.
Definitely.
Good.
Yes.
All right.
You know, Gene, I wanted a globe for Christmas, and I didn't get one. It meant the world to me.
Well, if only you had an American flag on your jacket. So
there you go.
All right.
I was going to say, wait, Gene, these American flags are getting a little bit. So you're starting off with the original size. Then Rick is, I don't know what he's got over there. Is that the UN and Canada, U.S. and Israel together? I can't tell from here. But then Hank has a bumper sticker on his lapel.
Yeah, mine's Texas and Israel. I had to bring a little Texas flavor to it.
That's it. I knew there was 3 countries there, and so I'm looking at you guys tonight, and I'm feeling so unpatriotic. But who can beat Hank? I mean, he's got a bumper sticker on. I can't compete with that.
I know. What a way to start the new year! I've lost control already. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I don't know if you knew this or not, but here we go. This is the big year, and so I know you at home. You're wondering, well, what are the latest poll numbers? You want to see this? Oh, yeah, you do. All right, watch this.
How about the Democratic end of things? Joe Biden seems poised to be the Democratic nominee. What kind of year has he had politically? Well, again, he started 2023 coming off those good midterms for Democrats, and his approval rating, 46-50, wasn't that bad, but it's taken a hit this year. And as we start to close out the year, our final NBC poll had him at just 40% approval, 57% disapproval. How does this compare to past presidents? And here you can see it. Here's the 40 that we have Biden at right now. These are all the final polls. Just see all the recent presidents. Look, Trump got beat in 2020. Bush Sr. got beat in 92. He was at 52 and heading south rapidly there. But you see how that number compares. That's the lowest. That's the lowest in an NBC poll.
All right, so that's MSNBC. So that means absolutely nothing. That's what we know about polls. They mean absolutely nothing. Although, when you start seeing these really left-leaning news channels say these things, it is something to pay attention to, but, I doubt it seriously, those numbers. Let me show you what Charlie Kirk had to say. First poll of 24 shows Trump winning Hispanic and youth. In the new USA Today Suffolk poll, Trump leads among Hispanics by 5 points, 39-34, 17% support an unnamed third-party candidate, i.e. that would probably be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Trump leads Biden 39-37, 37-34 when RFK Jr. is named as a third candidate. Take any poll with a grain of salt, but the trend is our friend. So let me show you this, and then I'm going to go to Rick and let him tell me what this really means. Trump leads Biden in key groups. Here we are. There you go. That first, if you can see that, Rick, put your glasses on if you need them. It shows Trump at 39. There is 17% Hispanic at 39-34. It's just what we just read. But Rick, does this surprise you at all?
Yeah, that and the youth, right? The top one doesn't surprise me at all, but the other two, that's a really good sign for folks to recognize. I mean, the Republican rarely leads either one of those, so this is a really good sign for us. I do have a solution for you, Gene, as far as our initial topic with the buttons and everything. I think we need to get a hold of the Flashpoint wardrobe department, which I know we don't have one, but maybe we'll get a big enough budget and we'll create a Flashpoint wardrobe department, and let's send Lance one of those neck, you just put it around his neck, and then it'll just be a big flag right there, and then he can outdo Hank. Okay, anyway, back to your poll. It's outstanding news. Outstanding news. Because remember, this is in the middle of all the attacks, all the indictments, all of the negative press, all of those things, and yet he's still leading in those two categories that we wouldn't expect a Republican to be leading. So I think that's very good.
What about you, Lance? You see this big jump with Hispanics. I think the common thought was this is why the borders were open, because the left was really leaning on the fact that we were going to have so many Hispanics coming to America, and they would have this unbridled affinity for the left. Well, that's not exactly what's happening.
Well, if you get into the crosstabs on this, Gene, you'll find that it's the youth vote that is really shifting, and it's shifting away from Biden in white, Hispanic, and Latino crosstabs. So the youth, because let's face it, Biden can't mask the fact that he really is like, dad at the nursing home. Everybody knows that. So, but the part that is, nothing is going to be easy. You're going to have to pay attention to Flashpoint and shows like this year, folks, because almost all the data that is optimistic for us is Trump against Biden. Now, like some 50%, because the Democrats kind of are baked in one way. People that love Trump aren't moving no matter what you try to do. His numbers only go up when he gets indicted. But if he ends up getting convicted, this is what they're saying now. That surge that he's experienced gets adjusted. Now, here's the worst case scenario. I don't want you to be too optimistic starting the year off. If Trump ends up against Biden without a conviction in these indictments, he sails in. But if he gets convicted in one or two of these cases, the gains get dropped because the media will lie about it and say he's a criminal, and suddenly he loses that advantage. Then if you switch Biden out because we damage him with impeachment stuff, right, then you roll in, it's going to be a whole new ball game with Newsom. So let's strap ourselves in for a wild ride in 24.
It is going to be a wild ride. And you're right. I'm glad you brought that up, because those are all elements to this race that will have a part in what happens. But, Pastor Hank, as we see this happening, I really want your opinion here. There seems to be this massive shift in the atmosphere, not just at church. I'm just saying there seems to be a shift with Trump coming into this year. Do you sense that? I know Rick is DeSantis, but I want to get your opinion.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the polls, I don't think they're accurate. I think they're probably a lot lower. And probably what those poll numbers reflect is, machines that are used to, make certain outcomes from that kind of thing. And I think it's also the fake news that's trying to, project a certain image. But I do think something, and I will answer your question here in just a second. I think we have to also watch, to Lance's point, and that is they may try to lower those numbers even more for this fake administration so that they can convince us that they have something more qualified. And so I think we need to be aware. But there is a shift in the air. God prophesied and said that this year, 2024, would be the year of rest. And that's from prophecies back in 2018 and 19, when God said ahead of time that the decade would start off harsh, very harsh, and even prophesied there'd be a plague. Yeah. And then he said we would come into a time of rest. And part of that rest is rest from our enemies. And when God brings rest from our enemies, he brings vengeance against the wicked. And I think we're going to see that play out as part of that shift this year.
I do believe that. Let me go back to you, Rick. We've talked about this on and off through last year. You still think we're going to see Biden out of the race before we get to November?
Yeah, I almost jumped in after Lance got done. I was going to say, I know Hank hasn't got to talk yet, but his flag pin's big enough that I get to talk twice. I absolutely think Biden will not be the nominee. I still stand by that, and I think that's why I think Lance's comments were so good about the numbers are going to change depending on these things. And I think Hank is right. I mean, listen, this shift is happening. God's doing something special in the country right now. I'm watching people online. As I scroll through social media, I'm seeing Democrats apologize for supporting Biden. I mean, that's a weird situation we're in now. A lot of people are starting to run from him. And, of course, a lot of that's the pain, right? I mean, everybody is feeling the economic pain. They're watching the border happen. They're realizing this guy is a disaster. But usually the Democrats stick with their guy, so that's highly, highly unusual. But, again, I definitely think they cannot go with him as the nominee. I do think, I mean, I know we've all said probably Newsom, but we've said this really for about a year and a half now. It could very well be Michelle Obama. And let's not forget the timeline. I know I said this a couple of weeks ago, but just keeping this in everybody's mind, Lyndon Johnson, it was March of '68 before he got out. So we probably got at least another couple of months of them kind of keeping Biden out front, and then at the right time, they're going to move him out of the way and slide in with Newsom or Michelle Obama.
So I want to know why you think Michelle Obama.
It's the same reason that when you come in this late with somebody, you need to have somebody that has almost 100% name ID. She's got so there's not the negatives that you would normally come in with. Of course, everybody would try to, obviously say anything Barack Obama did, she did. But the fact that she's a female, all of those things, it's going to make the attacks very difficult for the Republicans. So honestly, for the Democrats, she could be exactly the right person to drop into this mix of everything at the last minute. For us, it's got, when I say us, I mean those that don't want the communists to take over, because I really think Barack Obama turned out to be not just a socialist, but a communist, and she will be very much like him. We have to recognize what we're up against. They're going to have the media, and with someone like her, man, they're going to paint a rosy picture, and it's all going to be negative about Trump. And all those numbers Lance was talking about, it's going to change dramatically. So we're in for a real fight.
Lance, do you agree here with Rick? Or what? Well, let's talk about, do you agree or not with Rick? But I also want to tag on to that. We need to at least hit the whole Vivek and Nikki Haley, who seems to be higher in the polls. Do you see any shift there? Of course, DeSantis is still there, but I don't think there's really anything.
This is a two-part question, Gene. You're throwing at me here, as you typically do, solving world hunger and predicting where oil prices go, all in one question.
In 30 seconds, please.
Back to who's going to run on the Democrat ticket, and then we'll segue over to Vivek, if you want to, and Nikki Haley. It's a frightening prospect, is it not? That America is so capable of low information and manipulation that it could indeed be totally galvanized by Michelle and Barack at that, oh my gosh, coming out. Where's the convention going to be? It's in the Democrat convention. Can you imagine that? Woo, that would be so exciting. He's back in the game, and she's running, and he's the first man, lady, or whatever they're going to call him. Then Newsom as a VP pick, and her saying, I will only do it to protect us from Trump and the ravages of the extreme nationalists for one term, and that Newsom needs to have his opportunity, and we're going to move together in unity. I mean, that would be a really bad situation. But I don't know. I know that she doesn't want the job. They're living great. They've got millions of dollars and no stress. And Barack is probably telling her, honey, I'll be right there by your side. It'll be easy. I'll run the thing for you like I do Biden. But she has to want to be in that fight. And I'll tell you something. She's kind of an activist, but she doesn't have the hunger for that fight.
All right, Pastor Hank, but how are we going to pray? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think one thing we have to look at is, this is what I really sense in my heart. I think Obama is damaged goods. I think people in this country regret it. They didn't realize that it wasn't so much about the color of his skin, it was the darkness of a man's heart and his policies. And I think they've had enough, and I think that they understand that there's a lot that has been attached to him. But here's the real deal. 2024, pay attention, 24 is also a governmental number in Scripture, and it just so happens that it coincides with 24 cycle here. Because the court of heaven is involved. And you say, what is the court of heaven? This is very important. When David committed adultery with Bathsheba, Nathan the prophet was sent by God to bring the court of heaven to David and to bring righteousness, justice, and accountability. And this is what is happening, and it will happen to Barack Obama and different ones who thought that they could bring this kind of evil and turn this nation away from God. They're being brought to the court of heaven, and it doesn't matter what they try, it will backfire because now God's justice is involved. So be watching for that.
But speaking of plagiarism, let's talk about that. Someone else is in the news today. Look at this tweet by Christopher Rufo. More plagiarism, and independent researchers found 6 additional plagiarized passages in Claudine Gay's academic work. The total is now approaching 50, and this was January 1st. Let's look at that. Now, what you see there in red, that's the stuff that's exactly the same. But wait, there's not more. Look at the next page. It's still there. So much more, up to 50 passages and another one. There's so much. I don't even have time to read all that. So look at this. Charlie Cook breaks it. Harvard presidential candidate. Harvard President Claudine Gay has resigned in backlash over response to anti-Semitism on campus and expanding plagiarism scandal. Hers marks the shortest tenure as president in Harvard's history. Now, Pastor Hank, here's what I think. I mean, people plagiarize all the time. This backfired on her, and the light started being shown on her, and her deeds were found out. But what this says to me here is that there is a shift, that we want people that are actually going to tell the truth. And I think Harvard actually dealt with so much backlash. We know that this is, these guys, they run on money, they run on funds, and this is a besmirchment to Harvard's face forward. What do you think?
Well, the Lord said something on our New Year's service when he prophesied, and he said that we've entered into a time of rest. Notice it's the word enter. Just like a race, you still have to run it, but you've entered. So we've entered into rest. Rest from our enemies. God's going to rest his case. And he said that it's a year of divine reckoning, and it's also a year of unsealing. And I think what you're seeing with this particular person that's resigning, it goes back to, I just had my staff send me a prophecy from 2021, and then earlier this last year that said, watch the Ivy League schools. There is a stench that has come before me, and even their leadership, because of things that they have stood for. And God says, as you see them brought to the news, and then listen to this, Pastor Gene, removed, it is a sign that I am resetting, reversing, and a shift, to your point, is beginning. And I think you're going to see more and more of this reversals, resets, and then ultimately removals as God begins to set up new things, as it says in the book of Daniel. God's the one that tears down kings, and he sets them back up. And I think we're going to see it across the board, not just in politics, because this is about the generation of children that we are going to get this country back for them.
Amen to that. All right, let me show you, Lance, I'm going to give this to you. Liz Wheeler writes, Claudine Gay resigns from Harvard. Crushing loss to DEI, wokeism, anti-Semitism, and university elitism. The way to defeat wokeism is to be savage and relentless. If we are, morality will triumph over Marxism. A fabulous start to 2024. Huge props to real Chris Rufo. All right, so Lance, here's the part that I want you to speak to, because what we have here, and people are going, I know my religious friends out there are going to go, oh, we're not supposed to be savage, we're supposed to love everybody. We are going to love everybody, but we're going to be savage in our love, and we're not going to allow these things to take over. Do you see that happening, Lance? I mean, this is, you and I have talked about, and I heard you, I think you were one of the first people I said, we cannot remain on defense. At some point, we have to go on the offense.
Absolutely. I mean, remember, it was the Apostle Paul, and when he was being tried, and he was smitten across the face, he said, God will judge you, you whitewashed wall. Do you think to judge me according to the law? Yet contrary to the law, you order me struck. And they said, hey, that's the high priest. And they said, oh, sorry about that. I didn't know. Thou shalt not speak evil of a ruler of thy people. Paul was willing to go there. The same Bible that says, turn the other cheek, says that an angel of the Lord immediately smote Herod because he gave God not the glory. This is the year to be able to justly balance the mercy of God and the judgment of God, the fear of the Lord and the goodness of God. There's just scales that are about to come out. By the way, the thing about the Harvard president, most people miss, is the Jewish donors were really, and remember, Harvard has a lot of Jewish graduates. A lot of Jewish donors were putting the heat on and saying, not another dollar. Right. That got their attention with the money. It wasn't the conservatives. It wasn't DIE and all what we're looking for. The other thing, Gene, and this is the part most people missed, the Harvard Crimson Review. The students, remember, Harvard fears their students more than anything. I've been at protests at Harvard where they were protesting me. The Harvard administration is afraid of not making their students happy. That's why she caved in front of Congress. The students started writing, you hold us accountable for plagiarism and kick us out when we lie? How can we have an administrator who plagiarizes? That's what did her in. It's the students. It's like Jezebel's eunuchs that throw Jezebel out of the window. The students are the key to the changing on the campus.
Rick, what do you think? I mean, it makes sense to me. You think that's really, and why is this so important? Why should we be taking notice?
Well, it's huge because it's a repudiation of what the left has been trying to do. I mean, think about what they've been doing. They've been spitting on Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream for decades and decades. So they've been flipping this thing on its head when he said, you know, we should be judged based on the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And so they've been using DEI to choose people based on the color of their skin and their sex organs. That became more important than anything you knew, whether or not you plagiarized. If they had done the opposite, if they'd actually done what MLK said to do, judge people based on the content of their character, are they capable, what's their application, all of that, they could have ended up with, if you didn't care about whether somebody had the right color skin or the right sex organs, they could have still had a wonderful black female president. Carol Swain probably would have ended up being the president of Harvard, and they would have had somebody that was qualified, but they didn't judge them based on that. Because they went only after color of skin and sex organs, they got someone that was an absolute fraud. And so now they're embarrassed, egg on their face, they got all these other problems. Get back to the biblical principles of blind justice and the biblical principles of neither Jew nor Greek, and judge people based on the results and what they actually do instead of on all this leftist stuff, and we can restore the good results in these universities. So this is I think, a shot across the bow to all the other universities. I got my own Texas A&M right here in Texas that's got a president now that's adopting all this DEI stuff. So this poison has spread across the country. A lot of it started there at Harvard. This is a very, very good sign that at Harvard they're finally having to stop this nonsense. Well, not stop it, but this will arrest it a little bit.
Well, and it's not just it's just not Ivy League, like you said. There's even in Christian colleges, we're hearing and seeing some of this happen. And listen, you may think it's not yours. Do your own investigating, folks. Before you start spending your money to go to some of these people, you need to make sure you're investing in the right type of education. But here's my point, Lance, and this is the last comment here. I'll let you take us out to break here. This is where typically you get your people that are going to be in government. They come from Harvard, they come from Yale. You know, where's Eric Metaxas? Or you're going to get somebody along that line. This is where this has kind of been the pool from which they pull from. My, how far we've come since the Harvard Theological Seminary, when the whole thing began. You know, this has been it's a huge, huge disappointment to all of America.
We're not out of the woods yet, but I do believe that there's something happening, Gene, that's going to become more of a movement. And that is, as parents discover how their children are being radicalized and indoctrinated, you're going to see more of a response. It takes time for this stuff to permeate the consciousness of a nation, but it's coming to the surface now because the anti-Semitic pro-Hamas protests at major universities has created, it's kind of like, be thankful that God allows these things to come to the surface, because it's accelerating the exposure of the problem. And I do think as Americans get educated, they are not going to go back to sleep on these subjects.